So thank you very much. So obviously, thank you very much for coming, guys. Make this part really quick. Obviously, there's a lot of things you can be doing this evening. In fact, you're here. I appreciate it. Two really quick special thanks to Campbell, who is very kind of kindly and bravely agreed to join us. He's a patient of mine and has this lived experience, and that's part of the reason why you're going to see me sort of we're going to focus on the high impact, but we're also going to make sure that we leave plenty of time for Campbell, as well as obviously plenty of time for our questions. So thank you, and of course, thank you to Paul. Your advocacy has like quite literally saved lives. So thank you. You referenced the military, and so what you'll see is that really quick. When I was active duty, I would be called in. The brigade commander. At times, you go, Major D'Agostino. I had to obviously stand there, and when I had to brief him, he'd go, "What?" To tell him whatever it was. That was it. You go, so what? I'll tell him I go, now what? I give him the recommendation. So I'm not going to necessarily follow that exact format of the what, so what, now what, but I am going to try. You're going to see there's going to be a lot of information here. We're going to make sure that these slides are available, and we're just going to stick with the high yield things that you really need to know. And if I'm going too slow, Paul already agreed to electronically nudge me. So, all right. So I think you can see this here, the agenda. We're going to understand what kratom. We're going to go in a little bit quickly through tianeptine, phenibut, and related compounds are and why they are not simply supplements. Bottom line, legal does not equal safe. I think we know that, but we're going to reinforce that. I'm going to explain how metragenine and 7-OH. So that's really, everyone's going to go, what is this 7-OH? What they're really talking about is that 7-hydroxy on the metragenine. So if you actually look at this slide, I don't know if I can minimize if it's just on mine or if it's yours. Yeah, so you can actually see the OH there on your screen. I don't know if you can actually see. Are you guys seeing the screen still?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. For some reason I'm not. So give me 1 second. Oh, I'm like not even a boomer and this is happening to me. I can't. Sorry about that. I want to make sure. Okay, there you go. So we're looking at the OH. That's actually what a lot of the fuss is about. So obviously there's the metragenine itself is one of the active alkaloids, which we'll talk about. But that OH that you guys are seeing makes this compound roughly 10 to some reports up to 20 to 30 times as potent as morphine. And so I think that is really important. That goes to the third. We're going to understand how these extracts and concentrates alter pharmacology and increase risk. Of course, we're going to recognize dependence, withdrawal, and overdose risk, apply some strategies, and also, if we have time, go to some of the regulatory gaps. I'm trying to get to the next. Yeah, I really apologize. For some reason, it's not allowing me to go further. Ugh, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. It kept freezing on my end. Sorry about that, guys. So hopefully now this works. There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go real quick with what is an alkaloid. Again, there's more information than what we're actually need, but many familiar drugs are alkaloids. Morphine, poppy, caffeine, obviously, which all of us are familiar with, nicotine. So what they actually do is they have these potent effects on the nervous system. And alkaloids have evolved specifically to actually interact with our biology. So you can think of it as that these alkaloids are some natural, the bottom line, defenses of plants. So part of the reason why we're here, if we look over to the left side of this slide, Metragenous speciosa. So when people talk about kratom, they're talking about that plant. But what we're talking about when we talk 7-OH is we're talking about some of the alkaloids that are in the actual leaves. Because I'm sure you guys know with like THC, marijuana, a lot of it, the leaves actually have very low concentration of THC, whereas the actual, they call it the flower or the bud is much higher. So that's what we're talking about. So you then go down to that bottom one, the kratom's effects are actually driven by its active alkaloids. And that's part of the reason, why here. And there's many different alkaloids within it. And so within the actual leaves. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. So went over some of that, kind of what is kratom. It grows in Southeast Asia just naturally. So it's not, it would not grow, here in Connecticut outside of a greenhouse. Over 40 alkaloids. And there's the two that we had talked about, the metragenine and the 7-hydroxy metrageny. This is one of the points that's going to be really reinforced. 7-OH is the most potent alkaloid. And the reason why I put about 10 is I wanted to be conservative, but as we said, there's actually even more potent than that. And it also acts on multiple receptor systems. So you may hear some people say you can see some in podcasts, and there's even some products that are out there that are Kratom and kava, and they say, "Oh, it's great, it's helpful, it's natural," and in some ways it is. But when you have the leaf, which is of a much lower concentration, you don't have the 7-OH, or you have extremely tiny amounts of it. And what you're actually having is some of the other alkaloids that are acting on other systems. It can have, in some people, a bit of a calming effect, and others a bit of a stimulating effect. So I say that because you'll often hear people say that's why they started, and that's not wrong. That's not incorrect. But then as you go up and you have the higher concentration and higher potency, 7-OH concentrates, that's where we really get into a trouble. Not FDA approved. And again, the critical safety issue. And if you look down at the bottom with the traditional leaf, roughly 2 to 5% alkaloid content, these extracts up to 60% or more. And so I say it's like comparing beer to hard liquor, but that's actually understating it. If you really look at it, it would be like comparing a very dilute wine spritzer with like moonshine, where it's functionally at that point a very different compound. So, and I think that bottom line, like a child is unlikely to know what concentration they're actually using, and that's part of the danger. Pretty pictures here. What that is, if in case anyone was interested, that's an actual like an opioid receptor, electron micrograph, and of course it's enhanced so you can see it. But kind of just so that because when we'll hear about the mu opioid receptor, sometimes those that are visual will say, okay, that would be sort of what it would look like in the body. Metrageny is a partial agonist at the receptor. We don't have to get into all that. We'll have the slides. Again, you'll have the slides if there's other, sort of questions. You can obviously email me later rather than going into like detail into the pharmacology. But in addition to it being a partial agonist, it also has significant non-opioid activity, which is what we were talking about. And the 7-OH, again, reinforcing that point, much higher mu-opioid efficacy than metrageny. And that's actually what's responsible for most of the opioid like effects. And so just for comparison, when we look at morphine, I think it's a good comparison. But that is a full mu-opioid receptor agonist. That would be our reference standard, okay? Fentanyl, we know, is a very high potency, roughly, 50 to 100x morphine. And part of the real danger there, very narrow therapeutic index. So the doses that produce analgesia or pain relief are extremely close to those causing respiratory depression. So we don't have as much of the respiratory depression due to the partial agonism. So at least that's, at least when you're not using it with other substances, which we'll get to. But 7-OH, so it's that partial mu-opioid receptor agonist, at least 10 times more potent than morphine for analgesia and pain relief. So I just want to stop just for 1 second there. So if someone is asking themselves, okay, are you saying that my kid or anyone can go online or can maybe go into certain shops and can just go and buy a mu-opioid receptor agonist, which is roughly 10 times as potent as morphine? Yes, that's why we're here. Just want to let that sit in for a minute. So, and you can even just see from a marketing standpoint, these are just a few of the sort of products, how they can be sold. So you have the traditional leaf doses, which is not as necessarily as important and germane to our talk, but you can look at that later. But if we look at the why extracts are more dangerous, we've already started to cover this, so that's why I'm repeating it. So if you're like, okay, the extracts are more dangerous, beer versus liquor, faster absorption, higher peak concentration, and dominant opioid effects. And I really want to focus on that third, which is the polysubstance danger multiplier. A third of kratom emergencies involve mixing with other substances. Almost every death that's associated as polysubstance use, meaning other opioids, benzodiazepines, for those who are not as familiar with most of this audience would, but that would be Xanax, etc. Alcohol, of course. And so this is like mixing hard liquor with other depressants like a benzodiazepine. It's multiplicative, not just additive risk. And so I think that's That's really big. So the key takeaway, just to reinforce it, a lot of these products that are marketed as quote kratom, okay, that we're actually going to be seeing on the shelves, and I believe Campbell will be kind of talking more about. These are actually semi-synthetic opioids. Okay. Now with this one, I'm just going to go right to the third, kind of the polysubstance use dramatically increases risk. Again, third of poison center kratom exposures involve a concurrent use. Um, you have those higher risk concentration or combinations, but also, and we don't have to get too much into the pharmacology here. This is just to like plant that seed that kratom can inhibit, and more specifically, the mitragynine, 7-hydroxy mitragynine can inhibit important enzymes that are involved in drug metabolism.
Hmm.
And this goes through these other enzymes in the liver. Like I said, we don't have to talk about the specifics, but just knowing that even its presence can increase the levels of other co-consumed drugs. And that has to do with some of our biochemistry. So if my brigade commander was here, he'd be saying, okay, so the like, so what is that? The so what is like, okay, is that this is, especially when you take these in concert and you have that polysubstance use, very dangerous. So when we look at the most common acute effects and emergency warning signs, we'll look at those. So these emergency warning signs should be red flags for everyone here, but I think it's just always responsible just to say, of course, unresponsiveness, really off, altered mental status, slow, absent breathing, cyanosis, which would be, kind of low oxygen, seizures, cardiac respiratory arrest. Everyone here, I would imagine, especially if they have naloxone, would immediately consider administering that, and they would call 911. Most common acute effects, people are going to have agitation, irritability. To call it restlessness is an understatement. Tachycardia, which is just rapid heart rate, drowsiness, vomiting, confusion. And so, again, this is kind of larger for a reason. The naloxone, even though it has some variable responses, that should, of course, if you have anyone who you suspect may have an opioid overdose, that's life-saving and critically important. So anyone who's had opioid withdrawal is going to look at this and say, oh, this makes sense. Muscle spasms, pain, joint aches. This is if someone, for example, had stopped. Suddenly sleeping difficulties, insomnia, watery eyes, runny nose, decreased appetite, diarrhea, nausea. So, of course, someone could say, oh, I just have a really bad flu. That could be the case, but just to if you suspect it and you're seeing that, just be aware of that. The emotional and mental symptoms are very significant. Restlessness, anxiety, and like I said, even just using those terms is an understatement because they're suffering. Difficulty concentrating, and of course, strong urges. A week out, for the most part, it's over, but it's really difficult. When a few days in, sometimes it's even sooner, especially with some of the higher potency, where they can modify the chemistry, has a shorter half-life, but just be aware of that. And even though withdrawal is usually not life-threatening, we know here that for alcohol withdrawal can be benzodiazepine, but this is still painful, clinically, functionally impairing, and so very, very important. I told you I'd go through quickly, Paul. So it's one of the initial assessments and I just want to let you know, like if someone was coming in, what I'd be thinking. And they say they had been using this, and I'd be, again, excited that Campbell's going to be able to communicate with us. I'm trying to say, okay, what is the dose? How much are they actually using? What's the frequency? Product type? And I say, even though I write traditional leaf, it's almost never that. It's almost always the extracts and semi-synthetic isolates. How long have they been using? We're using, for those of you who know the cows who work in a clinical setting, it's a clinical opioid withdrawal scale. So I would be doing that. Of course, now one of the things we're hammering, polysubstance use as a real risk. And then be evaluating other comorbidities. Now, for those that have mild to moderate withdrawal, as you see, Advil, Imodium, sometimes they will need some of the other medications like Zofran, if that's the ondansetron there for those of you who aren't aware, clonidine, which can kind of activate on elements of the autonomic nervous system, and that can help to blunt some of the responses. So I think so that is a part. So that's for mild to moderate. So we won't necessarily need Suboxone. Um, and but I will say that for many people that have moderate to severe, they've tried, but Suboxone is in many ways becoming the standard of care. The stabilization doses vary quite widely. If what I've seen is 4 to 16, that's not published yet, but that's really what I've it's been in the patients that I treat. Um, and So then I'll just go to kind of like the long-term management. I think we can actually kind of skip over that. And what I'll do now, just to make sure we can at least really quickly cover these, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. But just wanted to kind of, hammer those pieces. For those who have ever heard of tianeptine, or haven't heard, may have heard of it. Zaza is one of the terms some people use that, but that's one that's referred to as gas station heroin. It's an atypical tricyclic antidepressant. That may not be as important for people, but just knowing that it modulates glutamate, which can be obviously very helpful in depression, but in the way that it works, it needs to have that opioid action. So what that actually kind of means is this is a mu opioid receptor agonist. This is a full agonist. Remember before we were talking about partial agonist and full agonist. This is a full agonist that can be bought over the counter and looks like things like this. These are just photos of it. Neptine's elixir. People can purchase right over the counter. So this is one of the other, obviously issues. Has a very short half-life, about an hour. And so for those that are in the medical or think chemistry, you're like, well, hold on. If it's as a short half-life, you have to take it a lot, right? Well, that's what happens when people get alprazolam, like Xanax addictions. It has a rapid peak and trough, and they have to keep doing it. This is similar. And sometimes the doses are huge multiple, that people are actually taking. So it'll say, and actually, Campbell, I appreciate you bringing the point up earlier when you were talking about one of the shops where it says, there'll be one of these sort of bottles and it says, there's 50 servings or something inside. But we know that people are going and just taking the entire thing. So people are taking enormously high doses of this. That's associated with dependence, overdose, withdrawal resembles opioid withdrawal. And you're going to see a theme here, which is, and we already went over this. We don't have to go over kind of all of that. But you're going to see part of the theme is the incredibly important factor of polysubstance use and the impact that has. So when we look at the withdrawal syndrome, looks very similar as you would expect to classic opioid withdrawal, anxiety, agitation, the GI symptoms. And so naloxone, again, is really important. But here we have even better, as a full mu opioid receptor, Suboxone, is really used. And some of the big things, if someone's like, oh, Zaza, you see something that says tianeptine, tianeptine behaves pharmacologically like a classical opioid, not an antidepressant. And this is a little bit more likely, not to obviously don't want to scare people, but we're here to educate. It does have risk of overdose death. So we've gone over some of the symptoms. I'll go right to the second one. One of the points, dominant risk factor here. Most commonly co-used alcohol, benzodiazepines, other opioids, phenibut, kratom, and so alcohol is used quite a bit. Benzodiazepines is just some data from poison centers. And with here, again, we really go right to an opioid use disorder model. Like that's it. Like obviously if needs be, as you already saw when we were talking about 7-hydroxymetragenine or 7-OH, we will do that quite a bit. But here, in the few cases I've had, kind of gone straight here. And it's been, very, very helpful. Doses 8 to 20. And then, of course, So here's one other thing I want to talk about was phenibut. In case you've kind of heard of this, this is a prescription drug that's essentially sold as a supplement. You may end up seeing it on a, and again, it would almost look like, I don't know if you have any, one of your sons or daughters who are like weightlifters. You know, you can see what it'll look like where they'll have their like protein powder. It won't be as big, but that's sort of how it looks like as you're seeing there. It can be marketed as a dietary supplement or amino acid derivative. Absolutely not. This is a prescription medication that was never approved in the US that finds a way around its laws and is now sold as a supplement. It is kind of a mix of like a benzodiazepine medicine called baclofen and gabapentin all in one. But I would argue the most important and dangerous element of it is its GABA A activity. So for those that know, that is what the benzodiazepines like Xanax um, will act. So it can act on that receptor as well. Again, sold online as a nootropic cognitive enhancer. And as that's happened, poison center calls, not shockingly, have increased dramatically. And so from a withdrawal, severe withdrawal can result in delirium, hallucinations, seizures, agitation. For those that really go into a severe enough withdrawal, very high percentage need ICU admission, up to a quarter required intubation, just breathing support. So it's just knowing that these are obviously very important. With the research chemicals, I don't know if I have any of my friends from the Lighthouse here. This was something that, without getting into specifics, we had recently, had it was someone who was, I guess, using a very high potency 7-OH derivative as well as some other research chemicals. And this is really high potency drugs hiding in plain sight. People can just buy things online. They're sold as, quote, not for human consumption or, quote, research compounds. Many of these are very potent. The designer benzodiazepines. Some are synthetic opioids, semi-synthetic kratom derivatives. So even some ads, if not even more powerful than the 7-OH, and as well as some of the synthetic cannabinoids, which some people had heard of those, and some of the unpredictable effects, including psychosis, and of course then some of the clinical risks. Potency is unknown, highly variable. As always, the polysubstance exposure, is a big deal. And I think that third point on clinical risk, they're undetected on standard immunoassay toxicology screens. This is the same actually for almost all of these compounds. Because when you got to think of the validation processes, the amount of money, the amount of energy that goes into actually creating a reliable assay that you could either do a urine test, or you could send someone to LabCorp, or you could send someone to Quest Diagnostics. It's an enormous time investment. So many of these are able to evade, so to speak. So you can even have people that are in treatment programs that will be using these, and they'll say, "Well, I don't know why I'm coming up negative. Everything's fine." So, and that's sort of where this is coming from. I don't know if any of you guys have, and I'm getting close to being done. If any of you have seen the Matrix from back in the day, there's a scene where there's, they're having a little bit of a gun battle, and they just sort of, move, and somehow they tend to get around the laws. I feel like in some ways that's what the regulatory sort of landscape, is happening here. And that's what a lot of the creators of these compounds are doing, because the traditional kind of substance by substance scheduling, bottom line, it can't really keep pace with some of the chemical innovation. And there's been like the modification of the molecular structures faster than regulatory agencies can respond. And I think, because I could see if someone wasn't aware of some of these, people go, hold on, is like this guy an alarmist? Like, why the heck are these things even legal? And I think this is part of the reason why. And so current regulatory framework, again, is designed for more traditional substances. So there really is some chemical innovation that's occurring here. So really quick, even though there's a lot of words here, you can look at it. Connecticut is, to their credit, really trying to respond. There will be a meeting next month, as you can see, in June 2025. There was a public act. It was formerly House Bill 6855. There was a public act, which was directing the Department of Consumer Protection to actually go through the process of scheduling. And I think this is what's important of scheduling, but that's not all of them. That's specifically adding kratom and its alkaloids to Schedule 1. So it's not like that happens and they do it and poof, now it's Schedule 1. It's a process which is at least happening at the level at these levels. And then now when we look at some of the drivers of regulatory action, meaning if you were to like be a nerd and go into the House bill and say, well, what was some of the justification? This is what they were saying. They were saying rising concerns about high potency kratom extracts and semi-synthetic derivatives, like we were just talking about here with opioid-like effects, large variability in product alkaloid content, which is what we were talking about. The youth access through gas stations and smoke shops and vape stores, which is what we were talking about, as well as increasing emergency department and poison control, which we talked about. So just want you to at least know that they've been trying. They were the same information we're talking about was, what they were, they're working on it. And I would love to talk a little more about the regulatory again, because you brought up the health policy, but I think that'll put a few other people to sleep. So, but if you're interested, it'll be in there for later. And I think just knowing that there is some action that's being started at the federal level, but again, these are moving so slow. And I just did want to really quickly go in that enforcement paradox. And it's just using Phenibut as an example. There were FDA warnings about Phenibut. What ended up happening is it led to pretty significantly increased product availability and potency. Because if you have advisories and you don't have enforcement, what do you think is going to happen? Like it's very clear evidence to those that are making it. All right, well, there's market demand. And so there's just greater availability of it. You end up seeing a rise. And so it's just knowing that that enforcement, really matters, as well. So I understand there's so much more that we could have spent 5 hours just on kratom, but I wanted to obviously just go high level and leave plenty of time for us all to speak afterwards. So what I'd love to do now is actually hand over to Campbell, who can provide, kind of his lived experience with
Sure.
it. So thank you so much, Campbell. I'm
Yeah.
grateful for you for coming.
Hey guys, my name is Campbell. I'm a dog walker in New Canaan, so you might have seen me around town. But I was addicted to 7-OH specifically for about for about a year. Actually no, for about 6 months. That was about a year ago now. I've been clean for about a year. And it just spiraled out of control very quickly. I started using kratom, and I didn't really have much issues with that because I was using leaf kratom, which is, as Dr. D'Agostino addressed, very low potency. And then I was one day, this stuff 7-OH started appearing, and the smoke shop owners, who obviously don't care about safety, they're like, "You should try this stuff. You should try this stuff." And I'm like, "All right, I'll give it a shot." And it's wildly potent, like very much the same level of like hospital opioids. I don't know how else to describe it. So basically, it went from, I would occasionally take kratom when I was in college, and then I would take it occasionally for like pain or something, but the kratom was never really an issue. And at that point, and then at the time where I started taking 7-OH, it was like a quarter pill, and then it was a half pill, and then it was a full pill, and then it was 2 pills, and then it was a whole package every day, and then it was 2 packs every day. And by the time that it got to about 2 packs every day, I was waking up in the middle of the night needing to use it. And at that point, I was like, all right, I need some help. So I reached out to Dr. D'Agostino, and I started on a regimen of Suboxone, which has been super helpful. And I've been clean for about a year, as I said. Just trying to think of other stuff. Obviously, you guys are going to ask some questions, but I just want the things I wanted to touch on are how easy it is to hide, the fact that it's not regulated on the federal level, so it's very easy to get access to. There's a massive supply of it. Like smoke shops, just local smoke shops have hundreds, if not thousands, of pills, in their thing. I'm just sorry. I'm trying to think of some of my more points. Some of the notes I took. Yeah, like I said, it's very easy to hide. So I'm gonna go over some of the warning signs. Um, I can give more specifics as you guys ask questions, but the things to look out for would be pinpoint pupils. That's the number one thing. You can see that with opioids as well. Pinpoint pupils are impossible to hide. You can't put in eye drops for them. You can't, I mean, you can't like put in contacts or something. So you're gonna see those no matter what. So if you're suspicious of your kid or your thing or your, anybody in your family using, look for their eyes. Look at their eyes like closely. It'll, it's very, very tiny pinpoint. Like when I say pinpoint, I mean pinpoint, like alarmingly so. Another what would I say? Another warning sign is constant sleeping. Like when I was at the peak of my usage, I was taking probably 2 naps a day and then going to bed at like 9 p.m. Like I was sleeping a lot. Um, and yeah, and it's and you'll nod off in the middle of the day too because it's very potent. So there's that. So it's super. And then the other thing, let's see. Oh, and look for little paper circles where kids are pushing out the pills from. Like most kids are smart enough to throw away the actual plastic or packaging, but not the little paper circles. So if you see those starting to appear everywhere, usually they'll be like the brand I use. They were light blue. They're like about half inch size. Just look for that. And then, if you're suspicious, there's probably a reason why. I'm not saying be paranoid, obviously, but it's just I guess that would be where I'd start. And then I don't know. I guess I would just bring it over to questions because um I don't know. Yeah, I'll bring it over to questions for now because I have a lot more to share, but I my thoughts aren't organized at the moment. I apologize. So, anybody have a question?
Thank you so much, Campbell.
Yeah. So yeah, Margaret.
Hi, Campbell. Thank you so much for sharing your story and also
Yeah.
congratulations on a year in recovery. That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Really appreciate it.
We've just a number of our communities have just completed a landscape analysis where we've been wandering in and out of gas stations and bodegas
Yes.
and smoke shops to see what's available. And we all were commenting, like you and Dr. D'Agostino said, on the vast amount of kratom everywhere in all forms.
Yes.
But what's interesting is to me is, I haven't talked to a lot of people who have used it.
Sure.
The national statistics that you look up are kind of based on 2021. They're like, maybe 1% of the population's using it. So I'm really interested in any insights you can give us on like you and any other people who were
Sure.
using or are using it. Was it being fed to you? Like, were you being targeted with social media ads? Were you just going in for a vape and it was the store owners who
Sure.
were like, try this? Like, even just starting Kratom, because you said the store owners kind of pushed the 708 at you to
Sure.
try.
So when I started Kratom, it only existed in the leaf form. It was like powders and pills. So you had to take like 30 pills to get the opioid-like effect, and they were each like a half gram or something. So you're taking the leaf powder by a gram, and the answer is yes, absolutely. These smoke shops push it on you. I like. Sorry, I'm trying to think of it like. I started with, like I said, the leaf kratom, and then they're like, "Oh, you should try the concentrated kratom, OPMS." It's supposed to sound like opium or opiums or something like that. I don't know. And that's concentrated leaf kratom, so it's a higher concentrate of the mitragynine or mitragynine or however you say it. And that's so I got that, and I was like, "All right, well, it's still kratom. It's still the same thing. It's just a higher concentrate." And then, like I said, it's then I never would have tried that had it not been for the smoke shop owners being like, yo, you should try this. You should definitely try this. It's safe. It's good. It'll make your bones feel better. Like it'll make your joints feel better. And then the other thing I noticed is I have a friend who is a woman, and she was using kratom occasionally to keep up with her job at a gas station because she's on her feet all day, and like Dr. D'Agostino alluded to, low doses kratom can give you an energetic effect. Somebody was feeding her the 7-OH in the hopes that they would get to sleep with her. Yeah. Wow. So like, yes, there are people that know it's addictive, like an opioid. And yes, these smoke shops are pushing it. I was also offered the gas station heroin, but I actually knew what that was. So I was smart enough to say no to that.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, no, they're pushing it everywhere. If you go into any gas station, you say, "Hey, I have a backache." They'll give you the highest potency stuff, and it could kill you. Um, I see stuff like that. Like I brought it up in the meeting prior to the meeting actually starting. There's this energy drink called Juby, or it's not. It's marketed as an energy drink, and it's like all natural. Like you'll find it if you go into a gas station. It's like all natural, plant based, but it's 50 milligrams of this stuff. And like Dr. D'Agostino said, that's the equivalent of on like a conservative level, 500 milligrams of morphine. That can kill someone, very easily. So yes, the answer is yes, absolutely. These smoke shops are pushing it, and they're making it seem much less dangerous than it really is. I'll go next to Susan. Susan Cave. All right. I think it's not muted, or I think you're still muted, Susan.
Sorry. Have you?
Oh, there you go. Yeah. How are you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Now I can hear you.
Okay. Okay. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
No, no problem. No problem
I'm
at
a
all.
little technically challenged sometimes, but I just wanted to share my story of my son.
Sure.
He was 32 years old and died in April of 2024. So it's been almost 2 years since
I'm
I've
so sorry.
had him. But he used Kratom for about 4 years. He took OPMS,
Yes.
OMPS or something. You
Mhm.
know what I'm talking
Mhm.
about.
I do.
And he got addicted. He was addicted to this stuff. He
Mhm.
started taking it to supplement his anxiety and depression medicines, which were being prescribed by a doctor. And the mix of kratom and his antidepressants, which were Celexa and Prozac, killed him.
Oh my
And he
God.
was simply standing up. He was fishing, wade fishing about knee deep, collapsed in knee deep water, and he drowned. And when
Oh
his
my Lord.
toxicology came back, it showed that metragenine was a contributing factor to his death. So he was told by somebody at work that it would help his anxiety, and so he
Yeah.
looked online, and everything he read said that it was safe.
Well,
And
yeah,
he
sorry.
at first
Go ahead.
it made him feel better, but about 6 months in, he started feeling worse, and it was just a horrible cycle that he went through continuously trying to get off this stuff.
Yeah.
And anyway, I just appreciate you listening to me,
Of
and
course.
I really do miss my son. I'm a part of Kratom Danger Awareness Group that
Good.
we speak up for people who have lost loved ones from Kratom.
Oh my gosh.
And for
I'm
people,
so sorry. At one point I not knowing the Rangers, I recommended it to my friend, and he was overweight, and he said I couldn't breathe. I thought I was gonna die.
yeah,
He couldn't breathe that night. And I thank
yeah,
God he was fine, but
yeah,
like he's like, what the fuck?
yeah, I
Excuse my
know,
language. I'm sorry, I
but no,
apologize.
no, no, but
But
what was so scary, and I'm looking back on it,
yeah,
is the doctors that were, seeing him for his prescriptions.
yeah.
William told the doctors that he was using kratom to
Oh no.
supplement. And, I don't blame the physicians, but uh, it was amazing to me after he passed how many people
Mhm.
did not know about kratom.
Yeah.
Health professionals,
Yeah.
um, d- uh, ARNPs, doctors, honestly. So, I think that now maybe hopefully people are starting to listen
Yeah.
as we share our stories and we share the truth. But let me assure people, there are what, 28 people on this call right now, that kratom is a very dangerous and deadly drug. My hopes and prayers are it's obviously being used by millions of people across the nation, and they say it helps for pain, for trying to get off opiates and that kind of stuff. And I hate thinking to know that people are in pain. So my prayer is that kratom will be either scheduled, banned, which will allow non-biased studies to take place. And
Mhm.
hopefully in the future it can be prescribed as a drug and to help people who need it. But
Yeah.
my son died from this shit.
Yeah.
And I thought it was safe. He thought it was safe, and now he's gone, left
I'm
behind
s-
a wife and a 10-year-old daughter.
I'm
And
so sorry.
I know I am too. It's just
Yeah.
heartbreaking when I start thinking about it. But um, I just appreciate you hearing me and having this webinar that I could
Yeah.
join. in tonight.
Absolutely. Well, I would just say the only other thing I'd say is kratom is extremely toxic. Like it'll make you sick. Like not just respiratory depression. Like one time I was pet sitting and just out of nowhere I had to vomit, and I vomited for I don't know, but it was a lot, and it didn't stop.
Yeah.
Anyway, super duper toxic on your body as well.
Yeah. And the scary thing is, there's
Yeah.
not really been any scientific studies to show
Mm-mm.
what long-term effects are, how it interacts with other drugs in the body. There's no established lethal dose. What if somebody has pre-existing health conditions? There have been no scientific studies to prove the safety of this stuff. There's so much left to be known and to study. But in the meantime, let's get it off the shelves of gas stations
Yes.
and smoke shops. Let's get it out of there.
Yeah.
And you know, another scary thing to me, if lawmakers just regulate this stuff, there's going to be bad actors. There's always going to be a bad actor to come in there, see a product they can exploit, recreate it, synthesize it to become a product even more deadly and dangerous than raw kratom. It's
Yeah.
not, regulations will not work.
100%.
That's my opinion.
All right. Yeah, no, I agree. And thank you for sharing. I know I'm sure that's
Thank you so much.
very difficult to share. Therese, yeah.
Yep. Hi.
Hi. Nice to
Thank
see
you,
you.
Mark. And
Hi, Cherise.
Campbell.
It's been a long time. Good to see you.
I know. I'm so excited. I couldn't wait to be here. And this is something I've wanted to learn more about. And so my question, Campbell,
Yes.
for you, were you already using substances and maybe abusing substances at the same time?
Yeah.
Were you using other substances?
Yes,
well?
absolutely. I mean, I was a pot smoker, and I have to be honest, occasionally still am. It's not good, but I don't want to sit here and lie to you. So yes, I was using it but then I was using it with alcohol.
Yeah.
And that was a big problem. The alcohol got to a point where it was very bad, and I've stopped with that. But I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My brain is not working. Can you re-ask your question one more time? I'm so
Oh no,
sorry.
I was just curious about that piece.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's
very curious.
I would say it's more likely. Very few people that aren't already using substances are gonna just go, yeah, let's try kratom. Let's go into a gas station and buy a little sketchy pill and try that. I think most people are gonna have some kind of. I don't like this term, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like the intro drug. I can't think of the word right now. Gateway drug. Gateway drug. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, that would be my answer to that.
And
Ellen?
you also said that you didn't.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing you said was that did you say you didn't have a problem with the kratom, but it was?
Yes. So I didn't have a problem with the
708.
non-concentrated kratom. I was able to use that like occasionally, once a month or so. But then the OPMS, as was alluded to, and then the 7OH, which is something like it's a whole another beast. It's very, very potent. So this OPMS led into the 7OH because I thought 7OH was more potent OPMS, but it's actually in fact a different alkaloid, and it's much more potent. So that's how that happened.
And do you think you weren't addicted? The kratom, you didn't have, I guess you didn't, was it just not strong enough for you and you were looking for something stronger?
No, it was that the kratom was so hard to take to get the desired effect because you had to take dozens of pills or so, and it would be physically sickening to have to take that many pills. So I was like, oh, let me try the OPMS.
Okay.
And yeah, that's what went from there basically. Yeah, Ellen?
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Hi, I think John had his hand raised.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's do John first then.
And then I'll come
Sorry
back.
about that.
It's okay.
John.
Thank you. Thanks, Ellen. John, thank you, Doctor. Very insightful, and thank you for your opening, Campbell. I just wanted to make a comment. You can buy this stuff online. That's a real problem. And I in the Post they had gas station heroin. I was like, what is that? This is a couple of years ago. And there's about 25 states where it's against the law. It should be against the law in all 50 states. It's outrageous. Kids can buy this stuff. And there's no way, as a parent, you're going to know what your 12, 13-year-old son is doing until it's too late.
No.
Either you're going to get addicted to the stuff, end up on a slab in the hospital. And I was going on AI, and this is Tantapin I'm talking about, very much stronger than Kratom. I never really heard of it until I was invited to this meeting, and much stronger. And it's an opioid receptor, I guess, like Kratom is. It's highly addictive, ruins people's lives. Parents, you try to get your kid to stop drinking, right? It's impossible. So these drugs, people should get together and friggin' outlaw them. They shouldn't be able to buy them online. They shouldn't be able to go into a smoke shop. And then fine, worry about whatever comes after it. But there are states where it's already outlawed. And I don't think there's a blood test that's normal to see if somebody's taken that stuff.
You're exactly right.
And so the hospitals are totally in the dark. And so all the parents should get together and figure out how these other states outlawed this stuff and get it out of our markets. Now, if you can't buy it, you're not going to do it. Maybe you'll go to heroin or whatever else is out there. But it's
Well,
just
thanks, John.
yeah, sure.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Why don't you go to Ellen now?
Yeah. Ellen?
Okay, hi, thanks. I just wanted to point out also my daughter,
Sure.
who Paul knows about her, she was living in Vermont for a long time. And ironically, Kratom was introduced to her by her ex. It was all about natural health. It was a health supplement. He's actually a yogi and he's a holistic health practitioner himself. So they were taking it as, oh, let's have some in the morning instead of coffee. It was the powder. They would make a drink before bed. Whatever the different formulations were. And it's interesting that you were talking about, John was talking about where it's outlawed. Their source for it when they were in Vermont, I believe it is illegal to buy in Vermont. But they found out about a store called Bright Street Teas, which is like a lovely actual tea shop. They sell loose leaf tea, high-end teas, and they have a website. It's all very legitimate. That's the part of their business. But they also have a number that you can text if you know, where you can buy packets of the powder, the leaf powder. And they ship it to get around the laws. They ship it there in Burlington, Vermont, but they ship out of New Hampshire. So like, go 5 miles down the road, they have like a warehouse and they ship it from New Hampshire. So they will ship it into Vermont. So what I'm saying is all of these sort of shady backroom, even legitimate businesses often start out selling it as a health supplement.
100%.
They figure out ways around the spotty legislation. You can't buy it, but you can order it if you know the phone number, and then they'll go 5 miles into the next state and ship it to you.
Yep.
And
100%.
yeah, so and then of course the concentrate, once she was running out of that, she would go to just the head shop or whatever and buy the concentrate shots. Of course, we had no idea how it's terrifying now to hear now what we know about. She was also using alcohol pretty profusely too. But what's deceptive about it is that it is marketed and often touted as this big health supplement. It's natural. Yes. Drink it like kava too. I guess my question is also, is kava, does that have the slippery slope? Is that as
That's interesting you bring that up, because kava itself, Dr. D'Agostino, you might have to jump in here and correct me if I'm mistaken, but I don't believe kava itself is necessarily dangerous. I've heard it's used in teas, like the same way that kratom was supposed to be used. That said, there is a mix. There's a potent drink on the market called Feel Free, which is a mix of kava and kratom extract, and that's extremely potent. So I think kava mixed with other stuff can be potentially dangerous, but I don't believe kava itself is a slippery slope. No. But Dr. D'Agostino, you're welcome to correct me there if that's
so
correct.
It's like a lot of things. Like one of the core, and obviously want to make sure everyone has a chance. We have to go in a minute, but so I'll go real quick. But I think with kava, it's like one of the core principles in toxicology is it's the concentration that makes the toxin. And so at a low dose, it doesn't have the same sort of effect. But like when you have high dose kava, and this is what happens, where you'll even look, if you go around and look and see some podcasts, you'll see people that are recommending the health benefits of kava and kratom concurrently. And so it becomes a little tricky. Kava at a low dose, no. Kava, you go a high dose, and we don't have the time to get into all these principles of pharmacology, but sometimes you have different pharmacologic profile, meaning it's acting on different receptors as you change the dose, the amount of actual compound. And so is it harmless? No.
Okay. I think we have one, Tammy, you haven't gone yet, right? Yeah. So Tammy, do you have a question? I think you're just still muted.
Better?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
No, good. All good.
Quickly, I'm kind of sharing Margaret's sentiment that I haven't had opportunity to talk with many about this substance and the impact. Can you tell me a little bit about context of use? So when I think about like underage drinking and when kids get high, smoke weed, right? There can very much be that social aspect, like it's at a party
Yes.
or they're in a park together or in a car. Is there a social context to using kratom? Is it something that's done with others, or is it sort of a solitary
I would say
activity, if
kratom
you
is a
will?
very solitary drug, the same way that, say, heroin is. But to say that, like when I was first getting interested in the leaf kratom when I was in college, my friends and I, we'd make like a big tea together. So I would say no. Generally, it's a pretty solitary drug, but I think when you're first trying it with people, it's probably going to be in a group setting, if I had to guess. So yeah. Did we have one more question? And then I think we have to get going, unfortunately. Susan, did you have one more question? Or is it? All right. All right, I'll let Dr. D'Agostino take over from here.
Thank you so much, and thank all of you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Campbell.
Yeah, of course.
So-
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes, sorry. I think we have one more
I'm
question.
sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I had to unmute myself, but just some final comments. I'll make it real
Sure.
brief. To Ellen, it is illegal in Vermont. That's one of the states where kratom, it is illegal in the whole entire state. Mr. John brought up about how, we ought to keep it from getting in the country. Well, right now there is an import alert. The FDA has an import alert 5415, and it should not even be in this country. It gets
Fantastic.
in this country because it's being misdeclared at port, being declared as fertilizer, not for human consumption, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
I wanted to reply to Paul. My son, he had to gradually increase his dose of kratom to get the same desired effect. I wanted to reply to Ellen that kava, from everything I've read, there's nothing really bad about kava, except I think it can give you psychosis, and if you take a whole ton of it. Okay, but if you mix it with something else, just like Paul was saying, it's dangerous. That's why feel free's killing people.
Yep.
Tammy, people, you were wondering if this was a social type drug. I think that Paul is right. It's more of a sedentary type drug. People really don't take, I guess some people take it to get high, but most people take it to cure an ailment, not to get high. So it's not like getting together and smoking a joint and getting high. It's more of anyway, I just wanted to make those final comments. Thank you for hearing me.
Well, it's very helpful. And actually, just to underscore the point you just made, if we look at the first two lines, and this is, like I said, we'll have this available. Part of the way, and like kind of why I use that may have seemed silly kind of reference to the Matrix, but is that they're sold online as, quote, not for human consumption or research compounds and marketed as legal alternatives to control. And so again, sourced internationally, minimal regulatory oversight. So when you were saying that, then you were spot on, and that's exactly what's been happening. And so ideally having an integrated and coordinated federal and state, but we still need obviously more action, and hopefully we can, this spurs a little bit. I'm so grateful for all of you for being here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, guys.
I do really thank you, and I will leave on a positive note to say I believe this committee meeting is coming up on February 24th, when Kratom can finally be made a controlled substance and outlawed from the smoke shops. So
What state
on
is
that,
that? What state is that, Dan? Or
no,
John?
that's in Connecticut.
That's here
In
in Connecticut.
Yep,
Okay,
in
good.
Connecticut. So it's coming up very soon. And
Well, I'll
so
make sure
please,
I email the lawmakers there.
yeah, please join me in thanking Mark and Campbell this evening.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you,
guys were great. Everybody, I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks for attending. And yes, you will get access to the slide deck after this meeting.